Hello viewers, this is the first in a mini-series of tutorials covering the new crops introduced in FS22. Hello, it is a lovely crisp day in March and we are going to have a look at some grapes. So first of all, grapes is one of the new crops that's been added to FS22, and as we can see, we can plant during March, April and May, and we can harvest in September and October. Now for this we do need some specialist equipment, and we're going to pop that into the field you can see in the distance. So let's head to the store and do some buying. Okay, so one of the new features again in FS22 is the ability to purchase vehicles and equipment through packs. And what this means is we can very easily grab everything we need to achieve a certain task. So right now we're going to go across to grapes and it presents us with everything we need. Now obviously there are variants on the vehicles and there are different bits of equipment that we can use. And of course, if you're into modding, you can certainly go ahead and download various bits of other equipment which will do the job. But for now, let's have a quick look. So we start with a small skinny Landini tractor, and that's going to allow us to get between the rows of grapes. We obviously have a specialized grape harvester, which I believe straddles the actual vines. And then we have our cultivator, I believe. No, that's our pruner. So that's for pruning the vines seasonally. We have a sprayer for fertilizing. Of course, we have a trailer and we have a mulcher. And there's our cultivator at the end. So what we're going to do is we are going to purchase these and then we can get them back to our farm and we can start to plant some crops. Okay, so that's everything we need. The next thing we need to do is, bar choosing where we're going to place it, which I think I'm just going to dump the vines into this field just for the point of this tutorial, is to go into build mode. So unlike most of the other crops, you actually need to construct the grapevines rather than plant them and seed them. Given that they are in effect trees, it kind of makes sense that you need to do that. So we need to go into construction mode, then we need to go across to production, and then we go down on the second row to orchards. And then underneath that we can see obviously we have an olive grove, which we will cover in a follow-up tutorial, but for now we want grapevines. So we're going to select the grapevine, and then you can see that a pole is placed in front of us, and so we are just going to place that roughly where we want it. We're going to move the cursor along, and let me just move the camera around so you can see, and we're going to place a row of vines. Now if I just pop that there, you can see if we move along it will continue to create rows, and in effect you can do multiple shapes. But for now I'm just going to hit on my controller B to cancel out of that, and I'm going to start another row. So if I get too close it disappears, obviously because we need a minimum space of width between the rows of vines to get our vehicles down. So I'm going to pop that one there, and then I am going to just roughly align that, just eyeball that up. We want to try and keep these as parallel as possible. If you get too close you find it will snap, so it will snap to an existing post or an end of a line. So let me just come away and about there. There. Okay, I'm going to go lay a few more rows here and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so we have planted or placed our vines via the construction tool. The next step is to mulch. However, we can't mulch just yet because the foliage, the grass between the vines isn't quite long enough. So we're going to let this run through one day just to get a bit of growth, and then we'll come back and I'll jump into the tractor with the mulcher and we'll take a look. Okay, so that's 24 hours, which in effect is 1 month in game time, and we now have some really good growth. So let's hop into the little skinny tractor with the mulcher and let's get mulching. Okie dokie. Right, let's just get ourselves aligned. Go into exterior view here. So I'm just going to run down the side, and we want to keep as close to the vines as possible. Let's just drop this down, and you'll see that that starts to churn up, in effect chop, and leave the grass and the various bits of foliage, which then we can cultivate into the ground, and that just almost helps fertilize the ground, but also at the same time enables light to get through to the crop. So we'll just do another row here just so you get an idea. And this is why, if you can keep things fairly close together, then fantastic, because you only really have to go up and down once or twice. There we go. So that's the second step completed, mulching. There's the first row, either side of this first row of vines that's been done. And obviously I haven't done these yet, but you can see the difference. So the next thing to look at is cultivating. So I'll go off camera and just finish the mulching, and then we'll have a look at cultivating. That's looking really rather tidy. Mulched everything. The tighter you can get to the poles, the better. You will find your tractor vehicle bumping off those, but I don't believe it does any damage to the actual crop itself. Let's go and jump in the tractor and pick up the cultivator, and then we can cultivate the ground. Okie dokie, so we are ready to cultivate. So we've got ourselves a nice disc harrow. We're going to jump on board. Let's get that lowered. And away we go. Try and keep as tight as possible to the vines. See, I've run into it there. That's just a little bit too close. Yep. And then there we go. So you can see the change. We still keep the fairly long grass, but we're just turning everything over. And this is again a reason for keeping everything as tight as possible, just to make this job a bit easier. So there we go. Let's just jump out of there and have a look. That's looking rather nice. So again, I'll go and complete cultivating off camera, and then we can come back and have a look at the next stage, which is fertilizing. Okay, that job is done. That's looking respectable. Maybe not perfect, but certainly respectable. Okay, so now we need to pick up the sprayer, and we're going to give this a bit of a spray, a bit of fertilizer. We want to do this twice, as there are 2 stages to this, in the same way that we have 2 stages of fertilized ground for any crop. So let me just turn off weeding, remove ploughing and limes, just so we can see. So we can see that field 42 is fertilized, but we have no fertilizer at all on the little patch that we're working on here. So we're going to grab that sprayer and we're going to give it a spray. Let's just back up here. There we go. Hitch ourselves up there. Ready to spray. Now the sprayer itself is just wide enough to get through these if you've put them as close as possible, but I believe that it does. I'm just going to check this. I think it sprays enough to cover the width of 2, so Yeah, so we can run, if I can drive this thing, we can run straight down the middle. Oh, this is just embarrassing driving. Right, let's give that another go. That was terrible. So just take it easy. We can run straight down the middle here. And that's that one done. And if we jump back into our map, we should be able to see, there we go, there's a nice strip of fertilized land. So again, we really want to do this twice. Give it one now, give it another a day of growth, and then you should be able to fertilize that again. So again, I'll go and do this off camera, and then I'll come back ready for the next stage. It is July, and we've given everything a second spray, and we are 1 month away from harvesting. We can see some young grapes on the vines there, looking healthy. So the next step will be harvesting time. Well, what a day to pick to harvest. However, this is not a crop that's affected by wet weather, so we can still harvest. That's not a problem. As long as we've got our wellies on and we don't mind getting a bit wet, I think we should crack on. Let's just go and have a close look at some of these grapes. I couldn't tell you what variety they are, but they are looking cracking. So let's jump in that New Holland harvester and get going. So there she is. She's certainly a tall, slender lady. Let's jump in the cab and get going. So we need to unfold, which means I was already unfolded by the looks of it. So back up. And let's get ourselves aligned with that first row. Now we've seen my driving, so let's not expect anything too amazing here. Right, let's turn her on. And we should be able to just crawl over those vines. Yeah, looks good. We'll get to the end of this and we'll quickly jump out the cab and just have a look. We can see, yeah, we can see the two hoppers. There's a hopper either side. Let me just turn this off. And that spits out all the chaff, so in effect the leaves and stuff. And actually, if we look at these vines, they are looking lovely and tidy. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm going to push on and do the other 3 rows, and then we will be ready for the final step, which is pruning. Just finished grabbing all the grapes off the vine, and now we need to tip into our little trailer, and then we'll decide what we want to do with them. So let's just get aligned on this, and then we can tip things out. There we go. So let's just start overloading, which is right button and Y. Fantastic. So not a huge yield, but then again we only have a small crop to work with, but that should give you the idea, and we can then take that to sell. We'll have a look at that later. Let's jump to the last step in the process, which is pruning. Okay, so it's been a few months. It's now a lovely, crisp, cool morning in November, and if we quickly skip over to our vines, we can see that the leaves have changed colour, they've crisped, and it's basically ready to be pruned. So we will jump back into our Landini and hook up with the pruner. Now I have a 3-point hitch on the front of mine, so I can actually attach this on the front with a PTO. Let's get close enough. And I suspect if you're a grape pro and you have the ability to line up your grapevines when you're in construction mode, in a perfectly parallel manner, then I think you'll find that you could probably run a pruner front and back and run right down the middle, just to save a bit of time. If you want to give that a go, I'd like to hear about your success. But for now, let's jump into cab view, just for a bit of fun. Sorry, and then we shall give this a go. So we're going to prune along the line of vines, and there we go. We can see those leaves trimming back. And there we go. So nice easy job. Fantastic. And let's just jump out and admire our beautiful work. So we have the core of the plant there, core of the vine. Strictly speaking, not, I think, entirely accurate, as I believe grapes only grow on previous year's growth. So in effect, we won't get any grapes on this because we haven't left any growth. But for all intents and purposes, we have pruned that first row. So that's it. I will complete the pruning, and then the last thing we need to do is do something with our grapes. Where can we sell them? We'll have a quick look and then we'll wrap things up. If we jump into the prices menu, we can see that grapes at this stage are selling for at most £2,200. But of course, with the introduction of production chains, we can have a look further down and see if grapes can be sold in some other format. And if I find it, there we go, raisins. So we can dry those grapes and we'll get £5,500. Or if we were to press them for grape juice as part of a production chain, we would get 4,700. So a little bit more work, but obviously that's the fun with production chains, and the reward is greater costs. So I hope you found that very brief and basic tutorial useful, and you're not going to hold me to account for my terrible driving. We have 5 steps: mulching, cultivating, fertilizing, harvesting, and pruning or stripping. And hopefully you guys can crack on with your own grapes and start to produce some real nice vintage wines. Hope to see you next time. I'm Adam from Crimson Banshee Gaming.